Imagine working your whole life to finally buy your dream $960,000 home, saving every penny, skipping vacations, and working extra hours just to have a place you could truly call your own. That's exactly what I did. I had dreamed of this moment for years, walking through a house that I could decorate exactly how I wanted, where I could host friends and family without worrying about anyone criticizing me. When the day of my housewarming arrived, I felt a mix of pride and excitement. Everything was perfect. Fresh flowers on the table, the living room arranged just the way I wanted, and the smell of home-cooked food filling the kitchen. I couldn't wait to share this milestone with my family. My sister, Emily, arrived fashionably late, like she always did. She has always had this way of commanding attention without even trying, and my mother, Janet, always made sure to praise her every little move. Emily has 2 kids, Ava and Declan, and she's always been the type to manipulate situations so that everything revolves around them. I knew she was self-centered, but I never imagined she would be so bold as to claim my house in front of everyone. The moment that changed everything came when she casually strolled through the rooms, her eyes scanning every corner, as if she was deciding which space her kids would occupy. Then she stopped in the master bedroom, the room I had painstakingly decorated and imagined as my personal sanctuary, and sat down on the bed as if she owned it. In a calm, almost innocent tone, she said, "Well, my kids will grow up here. You can move downstairs." I froze. My stomach sank, and for a moment I thought she was joking. But when I looked at my mother, expecting her to stop Emily, I found her nodding in agreement. "Your sister's family deserves stability," she said. "She shouldn't have to struggle when you have all this extra space." I couldn't believe it. The people who were supposed to love and support me were standing there, taking away my happiness, making me feel like my hard work and dreams meant nothing. The room went silent, the guests shifting uncomfortably, unsure how to react. I tried to laugh it off, tried to tell myself that it was just a strange joke, but deep down, I felt betrayed in the worst possible way. All my excitement, all the joy I had built up for this day, dissolved in an instant. This was supposed to be a celebration of my hard work, my independence, and my accomplishments. Instead, it became a scene of humiliation and betrayal, showing me for the first time that the people I trusted most were willing to undermine me to benefit someone else. The shock and hurt hit me like a wave, leaving me speechless, unsure how to respond, and wondering how my own family could turn something so special into a moment of pain. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. Ever since we were kids, my family had made it clear who the favorite was. Emily, my older sister, was always the golden child. She could do no wrong, and my mom, Janet, was quick to praise her for everything she did, from good grades to little acts of kindness. I, on the other hand, was expected to understand, to bend, to sacrifice, and to make life easier for Emily. I was told time and time again that she had children, that her needs were more important, and that I should simply accept it. Emily has 2 kids, Ava and Declan, and they have always been central to her arguments. My mom would use them as a reason to justify favoritism, saying things like, "Lauren, think about the kids. They need stability. You have to help." Even when I was young, it felt like my dreams were secondary. If Emily wanted something, she got it, and if I had needs, I was told to be patient or selfless. This created a quiet resentment in me, one that I carried through my teenage years and into adulthood. I learned early that independence wasn't just a goal, it was a survival strategy. Over the years, I worked hard to create a life for myself, separate from the expectations and pressures of my family. I focused on my career, my savings, and my future. Buying my own house wasn't just about having a nice place. It was about finally stepping into a space that belonged only to me. It symbolized freedom from years of being overlooked, undervalued, and told to compromise. It represented my healing from the invisible weight of always putting others first, my self-worth, and the ability to make choices that were mine alone. Yet even as I celebrated this milestone, I could feel the subtle tension that had always been there, simmering just below the surface. Family dinners had always ended in passive-aggressive comments, and even when everyone appeared to be happy, there was a quiet competition, a sense that Emily and my mom had a way of asserting control over my life. That tension was like a shadow, following me from my childhood into my adult life, quietly reminding me that my happiness would always be questioned, minimized, or challenged. Now, as I stood in my new home, I realized that this house was more than a dream. It was a statement of who I had become. But it also made me painfully aware that family patterns don't disappear just because you succeed. They linger, waiting for a chance to test you. And in that moment, I knew that while the house symbolized my independence, it also represented the battle I had yet to face with the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The resentment I had carried for years was about to meet reality in a way I had never expected. The housewarming started off well. Friends and a few relatives arrived, carrying flowers, gifts, and warm wishes. I felt proud walking them through each room, showing how I had arranged everything and explaining little touches I had added to make the house feel like home. For the first time, I thought about all the hard work I had done to get here and how good it felt to finally share this achievement with people I cared about. Then Emily arrived. True to form, she was late and walked in as if she owned the place. Almost immediately, she started criticizing everything. She looked around the kitchen and said, "This kitchen is way too big for someone who barely cooks." Then she moved to the living room and added, "You don't need this much space. It's kind of overwhelming." Her comments were sharp, but she said them with a smile, as if she were joking. Finally, she glanced at the upstairs bedrooms and said, "Ava and Declan would love these rooms. I can already see them running around up there." I tried to ignore her and smile politely, but it was impossible to brush off the feeling of unease. I could tell she was scanning every corner for a reason to belittle or take over, and it made my stomach churn. The house that had felt so safe and full of pride just an hour ago suddenly felt like it had been invaded. My mom, as always, seemed to support her. She wandered around, making quiet, passive-aggressive comments that cut deeper than anything Emily said. "Maybe it's time you start giving back," she murmured as she looked at the living room. "Family homes should stay within the family." She even added, in that calm, disappointed tone she used when lecturing me as a child, "Your sister struggles more than you." I tried to maintain my composure. I smiled at the guests, poured drinks, and guided them through the rooms, but my heart was pounding. The excitement I had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a heavy tension I couldn't ignore. Every time Emily made a comment or my mom chimed in, I felt my confidence shrinking. I wanted to say something, anything, but I knew that reacting in the moment would only make the situation worse. So I stayed polite, nodding and agreeing where necessary, while inside, a quiet anger was building. I realized that my housewarming, which was supposed to be a celebration of my hard work and independence, was turning into the first chapter of a battle I hadn't expected. Despite the pressure, I kept smiling for the guests, hoping that somehow the evening would pass without disaster. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The tension, the criticism, and the underlying manipulation were signs that this night would not end as I had hoped. Something bigger, more painful, was about to unfold. After wandering through the house for a while, Emily finally stopped at the master bedroom. She pushed open the door, stepped in like it was her territory, and then, without hesitation, sat on the bed. Everyone in the room turned to look, some of my friends whispering to each other, unsure how to react. Then she spoke, her voice calm but filled with certainty. "So when do you plan on moving into the guest room? The kids will need this space. You're single. You don't need the biggest room." For a moment, I froze. I thought maybe she was joking, trying to be playful in that sarcastic way she always had. But the serious look on her face, the way she leaned back on the bed as if she belonged there, made my stomach drop. She wasn't joking. She was claiming my room, my space, my sanctuary in front of everyone I cared about. Before I could even respond, my mom spoke up, reinforcing Emily's claim as if it were obvious and reasonable. "Your sister's family deserves stability," she said, looking at me with that calm, disappointed expression I had known all my life. "She shouldn't have to struggle when you have all this extra space." The room went silent. My guests froze, unsure what to say, some shifting their weight awkwardly. I could feel my face heating up. Humiliation washed over me in a heavy wave. This was my house, the home I had saved and worked for. And here were my sister and mother making it clear that my efforts didn't matter. My pride and excitement from earlier evaporated instantly. I opened my mouth to respond, to assert myself, but the words stuck. Emily didn't even seem to notice my shock. She started gesturing to the kids, pointing out what could be their rooms, as if she had every right to reorganize the space according to her wishes. The audacity of it all made my hands tremble slightly. Guests looked at me, expecting some reaction, some explanation. I wanted to scream, to tell them this wasn't okay, but I stayed silent. Every word I had saved for the perfect moment seemed useless here. My home, which I had imagined as a place of joy and comfort, had become a stage for embarrassment. I realized in that moment just how deep the betrayal went. It wasn't just Emily trying to claim my room. It was my own mother supporting her, turning against me in the presence of everyone I trusted. The humiliation sank in like a weight on my chest, leaving me stunned, angry, and painfully aware that the celebration I had worked so hard for had been hijacked. No one said a word for several seconds. I could feel the tension thick in the air, like a silent agreement that this was not a moment of joy, but a turning point. And in that instant, I knew my housewarming, which was supposed to mark a new chapter of independence and happiness, had become the start of a battle I hadn't expected but couldn't ignore. After claiming the master bedroom, Emily didn't stop there. She started showing Ava and Declan around the upstairs rooms, pointing to closets, windows, and corners like she was giving them a tour of their future home. She spoke to them with that casual confidence that made my stomach twist. "Pick which room you want. Aunt Lauren will adjust," she said, smiling at them as if I were simply a guest in my own house. I watched in disbelief as my own home, the place I had saved for years to create a safe and happy space, was being handed over to someone else right in front of my eyes. The kids ran from room to room, laughing and imagining themselves living there, completely unaware of the tension in the air. Guests shifted uncomfortably, not sure if they should intervene or stay quiet. Then my mother approached me, her expression calm but insistent. She pulled me aside into the kitchen, away from the eyes of our friends and neighbors. "Lauren, you need to sign these," she said, sliding a stack of papers across the counter. "It's just temporary guardianship for the house. Emily and the kids can move in permanently. This is for the family." I stared at the documents, unable to process what I was seeing. My mother, who had always been the person I trusted the most, was demanding that I legally give up control of my own home. My hands trembled slightly as I held the papers, and my mind raced, trying to make sense of how this could be happening. It felt like a trap, like everyone I loved had conspired together to take away the one thing that belonged entirely to me. The betrayal cut deeper than words could express. My heart pounded, and a lump formed in my throat. I had imagined this day for so long. The excitement, the joy of opening my home, the pride of sharing my achievement. But that dream had been hijacked. Instead of congratulations and laughter, I felt humiliation and shock. The people who were supposed to celebrate with me had turned the event into an ambush. I wanted to scream, to push back, to tell them they had no right, but the mix of surprise and anger left me paralyzed. Emily smiled triumphantly, as if she had won some secret victory, and Janet's calm insistence made it clear that they weren't joking or exaggerating. This was real. This was happening. Standing there in the kitchen, papers in hand, I felt a mixture of heartbreak, disbelief, and a burning sense of injustice. The housewarming that was supposed to mark a milestone in my life had instead become a public display of betrayal. My family had turned a moment of celebration into a moment that made me question everything I thought I knew about them. I realized that if I wanted to protect what was mine, I couldn't rely on them. This was the moment when the hurt turned into determination, and I knew I had to find a way to fight back. Not just for the house, but for my dignity and my peace of mind. The tension that had been building finally erupted. Emily and my mother were relentless, their words cutting sharper than I had ever imagined. Janet's voice was firm, almost cold, as she listed every flaw she believed I had. "You're selfish," she said, her eyes piercing mine. "You're ungrateful. You don't understand real needs because you don't have children. You've never had to put anyone else first." I felt my chest tighten, the anger and hurt mingling into a knot I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the words. They carried years of expectation, judgment, and disappointment, all aimed at making me feel small and wrong. Emily joined in, her face twisted in exaggerated sorrow, tears streaming as she wailed that I didn't care about family, that I was cruel and uncaring. It was performative, theatrical, and designed to humiliate me in front of everyone present. For a moment, I felt trapped, frozen by the sheer audacity and weight of their accusations. But then, something inside me snapped. This wasn't about compromise or family. This was about control, entitlement, and trying to take what was rightfully mine. I refused to let them continue. I took a deep breath, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. "Enough," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This ends now. I am asking all of you to leave my house." They stared at me, disbelief flashing across their faces. Emily's tears turned to anger, her voice rising in protest. "You'll regret this. That house should have been for my kids," she screamed, pointing at the bedrooms as if to claim ownership again. Janet's face hardened, but she didn't argue further. They both paused, shocked that I had finally stood my ground. I watched as my family packed their feelings and left, one by one. The door closed behind them and silence filled the house. I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion, my body heavy with the weight of confrontation, but lighter for having set a boundary I had never enforced before. It was in that quiet, after the storm of accusations and shouting had passed, that the truth hit me with full force. They had never come to celebrate me, my success, or the achievement of finally owning this home. Their presence had been a calculated attempt to take, to control, and to make my celebration about them. The realization stung, but it also clarified everything. This was never about family love or support. It was about entitlement, manipulation, and their belief that they had the right to take what I had earned. For the first time, I understood the full depth of their intentions. I had been fighting for approval that would never come, defending myself against people who saw my achievements as an opportunity to claim something for themselves. That day, I learned that boundaries weren't optional. They were necessary. And in finally enforcing mine, I had begun the first real step toward reclaiming my peace and my life. After the confrontation, I decided to cut off all contact with Emily and my mom. I needed space to think, to breathe, and to figure out how to protect myself and my home. I couldn't let them manipulate me anymore, and I refused to be their doormat. I tried to focus on my work, my friends, and the little joys of life, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't done. A few days later, a relative pulled me aside and told me something that made my blood run cold. Emily and Janet were already spreading lies to the extended family, saying that I had promised them the house and then gone back on my word. They were twisting the story, painting me as selfish and cruel, while they presented themselves as the victims. I felt my anger rise. I had worked for this house for years, and now they were trying to steal my reputation as well as my property. That was the moment I decided I needed to take control. I wasn't going to let them manipulate anyone else or get away with what they were trying to do. I contacted a lawyer to make sure the deed was fully protected and legally airtight. I installed security cameras around the house, documenting every interaction that occurred in case they tried to step foot in without permission. I began keeping a detailed record of phone calls, messages, and encounters. I needed proof. Then came the shock. Through a neighbor, I learned that Emily and Janet had actually planned to move in that same week. Boxes were packed, schedules were set, and they were ready to walk into my house as if it were theirs. I couldn't believe the audacity. They had crossed the line from emotional manipulation to an actual plan to take over my home. At that moment, I knew that simply saying no or blocking them wouldn't be enough. This wasn't just about protecting my house. It was about exposing their lies and their manipulation for everyone to see. I needed them to understand that their behavior had consequences. I was no longer the timid sister who bent to their demands. I was prepared to fight back in a way that would protect myself and make it clear that I wasn't to be trifled with. I began mapping out a plan in my mind, step by step. I would make sure they couldn't enter my home, couldn't twist the story further, and couldn't manipulate other family members. I wasn't just defending my property. I was defending my dignity, my independence, and my peace of mind. Emily and Janet weren't just going to be blocked, they were going to be exposed. And this time, I wasn't leaving anything to chance. After making sure my home and legal protections were secure, I decided it was time to confront them directly. I invited Emily and my mom over under the pretense of trying to talk things out. But this time, I wasn't walking in blind. I had planned every word, every question, and had witnesses present to see the truth unfold. As soon as they arrived, I stayed calm and started asking simple, clear questions. Where did I ever say you could move in? I asked, looking directly at Emily. Why did you tell people this house was yours? I continued, my voice steady. Why did you pack boxes and plan to move in without my permission? Emily's confident facade crumbled almost immediately. Her face went pale, and she stumbled over her words, clearly panicking. Janet tried to step in, her voice smooth but defensive, lying through her teeth and insisting everything was innocent. I let them talk, letting the tension build, before I did what I had planned. I played the audio recordings I had made over the past weeks. Their previous demands, their manipulation, their attempts to guilt me, All of it was captured. The sound of their own voices, making unreasonable requests and spreading lies, filled the room. Their faces fell as the evidence became undeniable. Emily shouted, "That's not true," while Janet continued to deny everything, but it was too late. The witnesses, friends, and a few relatives I had invited watched in silence as the truth became clear. I stayed calm and firm. "You don't have a right to anything in this house," I said, looking at both of them. "Not the rooms. Not the space. Not even my time." My words were measured, but the weight behind them was heavy. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about boundaries, respect, and finally reclaiming control over my life. The panic and lies no longer intimidated me. For the first time, I felt fully in control, watching the manipulation unravel in front of everyone who mattered. I could see Emily trying to gather her composure, but the confidence was gone. Janet's usual calm and superiority had vanished, replaced by discomfort and the realization that her games had been exposed. This confrontation wasn't meant to humiliate them, though part of me knew it would. It was meant to protect myself and make it absolutely clear that I would no longer allow anyone to take advantage of me or my home. The evidence spoke for itself, and the witnesses confirmed the truth. By the end of that meeting, I felt a sense of relief and power I hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, I wasn't fighting alone. I had the facts, the law, and the support of others behind me. Emily and Janet could no longer twist the story, and I had finally reclaimed not just my home, but my dignity and peace of mind. After the confrontation, I knew I had to make sure there was no chance Emily or my mom could try anything again. I contacted my lawyer and had formal no trespassing orders issued for both of them. The documents were clear. They were not allowed on my property under any circumstances. It felt good to have the law firmly on my side, something I hadn't relied on with family before. Emily had no choice but to find her own place. The realization hit her hard, and I could see the frustration and anger on her face. She had expected to take over my home effortlessly, but now she was being forced to face reality. Janet tried one last time to guilt-trip me, her voice soft and pleading. "Family supports each other," she said, her eyes searching mine for compassion. I looked at her calmly and said, "Support goes both ways. You only take." The words felt strong and final, and I could tell they left an impression. This time, I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't bending. I wasn't negotiating. I was setting boundaries that could not be crossed. What made this even more powerful was that the extended family had seen everything unfold through the witnesses I had invited. They heard the truth directly, from the evidence and my questions, not from me trying to explain it later. For once, the lies and manipulations of Emily and my mom had no power. People saw who had acted unfairly, and Emily's reputation began to crumble. The manipulative persona she had carefully built over the years was exposed, and finally, others recognized her for what she truly was. A few days later, Emily called, her voice panicked and pleading. She begged for help, trying to find a way back into my life, or even just my home. But I stayed firm. I refused. I realized that helping her now would only allow the cycle of manipulation and entitlement to continue. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from guilt, free from constant expectations, and free from people who saw my success as a threat or an opportunity to take. I spent the next few weeks settling fully into my home, making adjustments and changes to truly make it my own. I finally felt peace in the space I had worked so hard for. There was no tension, no hidden agendas, no manipulation, just the quiet satisfaction of independence and control over my own life. It was more than just winning a battle over a house. It was reclaiming my self-respect, my dignity, and the confidence to stand firm against anyone who tried to take advantage of me. Emily and Janet's attempts to control me had failed completely, and for the first time, I realized just how strong and capable I truly was. The house wasn't just mine. It symbolized my freedom, my boundaries, and my victory. After everything was settled, I finally felt like I could truly make the house my own. I started renovating, changing rooms, painting walls, and adding personal touches that reflected my taste and my happiness, not the expectations or entitlement of my family. Every corner became a small victory, a space that belonged entirely to me. It was a quiet celebration of independence, one that I could enjoy without fear or judgment. I adopted a dog, a little companion who brought joy and energy into the house. Caring for her gave me comfort and a sense of responsibility that was entirely mine. I also restarted therapy, working through years of emotional abuse, manipulation, and guilt that my sister and mother had instilled in me. For the first time, I focused on my own mental health and my own healing, instead of trying to please others or fix what wasn't mine to fix. Months passed, and Emily and Janet remained estranged. They tried to contact me a few times, but I didn't respond. I realized that sometimes family relationships aren't just complicated. They can be damaging, and protecting yourself is more important than maintaining appearances. With the house finally a true home, free from their interference, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't known for years. I reflected on everything that had happened. I had lost a sister and a mother in the sense that they were no longer part of my life in the way I had hoped. But in losing them, I had gained something far more valuable: peace, boundaries, and self-respect. I learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for people who only want to take. Real love and respect must be mutual, and if it isn't, you have the right to protect yourself. The house had become more than a place to live. It was a symbol of my strength, my independence, and my refusal to let others control or diminish me. Each room reminded me of the choices I had made for myself, the courage it took to stand up to manipulation, and the clarity I had gained about what kind of life I wanted. I vowed to never again shrink myself for anyone, no matter how much they claimed to be family. I promised to honor my own needs, my happiness, and my boundaries. And in that promise, I finally found freedom, the kind that comes from knowing that you are enough, that your hard work is yours, and that you don't have to compromise your worth for anyone else. The housewarming that had begun in betrayal and humiliation ended as a testament to my growth. It was a reminder that even after the deepest hurt, you can reclaim your life, rebuild your happiness, and create a home, and a life that belongs entirely to you.